Allow me to reintroduce myself. Now tuned into the greatest.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the new episode of the Supreme Decisions Legal Minute podcast. And this is your guy, Supreme Decisions. And tonight, I'm actually going to do this one very different than I normally
Supreme
do.
on the track.
But I hope it still gives you something, because I want to give you my plug-ins first. And that's, yes, join the channel on YouTube, Supreme Decisions. We do now have a join button. And on there, you can actually become a part of the Supreme team, as D calls it. And you can also get several different tiers. There's 4 tiers where you have several types of benefits that are added for each tier level. Because like I said, we're going to keep going, we're going to keep growing. And we're also still going to have a couple other things that we're doing. And one of those is going to be, I'm still going to put things on Patreon, just for those that are over there, that go there. I'm still going to have a tier system on Patreon. They're probably going to work in conjunction with the YouTube side, but it's still going to be there because I actually saw that a couple people had joined. I'm not going to penalize them for the inactivity or the mistakes of Patreon. So with that being said, we're going to keep growing there as well. And lastly, if you guys haven't noticed already, the first set of t-shirts are going to be the Black Supreme Decisions t-shirts, which are going to be our initial shirts. They're going on sale now for pre-orders, and we're going to actually start shipping July 1st. So we got that in the works. They're going to be a 50% polyester, 50% cotton blend. I'm also going to have the thicker or the bulky tees for an additional $2. I have sizes all the way up to 4X. So call me about those, because you know us bigger guys, we got to have something to fit over these shoulders. And lastly, I'm kind of torn. Because the last couple weeks, I've been looking at the situations that's going on around the world. I'm looking at the fact of the reactions of George Floyd. And one of the things that I'm noticing is that a lot of other interactions are happening. Because we're seeing things that are... I'm trying to think of a good term in order to say it, because for me it almost sounds unreal, because I'm looking at something and it's talking about police reform, and for whatever reason that actually irks me, because we had an issue with prison conditions. We had an issue with jailing innocent people. And we have one of the highest populations of incarcerated individuals on the planet. We had a proposal that was sent over, and we had a bill that was signed, and it was named the Prison Reform Act. This act, in essence, out of 2.1 million incarcerated persons, helped less than 2,000 people. So it helped less than 1% of the incarcerated persons. Now, in the wake of George Floyd, and for those that don't know what this is about, or don't know what happened to George Floyd, give you a quick rundown just to kind of catch you up to speed. George Floyd was in a vehicle with a couple other occupants. And while being in this vehicle, it was thought that Mr. Floyd had been using counterfeit money. The police themselves were called out to the scene. And the words that was used was he was attempting to do a forgery or pass the bill, the counterfeit bill. In the midst of the interaction, Mr. Floyd was then arrested or attempted to be arrested. The police, now that we know there were 4 officers involved, each one of the officers have been fired and charged. Thomas Lane is the only officer that is still not in some sort of police custody. And David Chaucer, or Chauvin, excuse me, he was the officer that placed his hands inside his pockets while performing a restraint while George Floyd was on the pavement, called a carotid position restraint. Now, there have been several reenactments that have been on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. The problem is, most of these people that are performing these reenactments aren't doing the actual reenactments. Because I'm going to give you a story. You know that's what I do. I've been, at one point, participating as a bodybuilder. That's something that I actually attempted to do. Well, one of the things that I learned was minor movement changes how not only your muscles are positioned, but it also changes how you breathe, how your body responds. And when you're looking at a man with both hands handcuffed behind their back, then you're looking at a man that's roughly 220 pounds, leaning on a carotid artery, not only with most of that 200 pounds on that artery, but you have one's back that is now forcing your chest to protrude with a knee essentially in the person's lung. Now, understanding certain techniques, because there has been all types of hoolah behind it. The department allows for this type of restraint because it is actually a restraint used to pretty much either knock out or calm a person down if it is performed correctly. The longest amount of time, and I do mean the maximum amount of time, one is allowed to attempt or actually do this procedure is 1 minute and 30 seconds. Now, before I get into the details of this and even this podcast, I want you to understand something. While the move itself is something that's allowed, let's get that out. That move is allowed. The problem that people have with it was the fact that, one, by no means was it performed correctly. 2, when you're doing it and you're knowingly listening to someone yell or gasp and they defecate on themselves, they are losing control of their bowels. Because the reason behind the 1 minute and 30 second maximum is, if you watch any type of combat sport and you look at someone, a knee to someone's back is illegal if you're watching MMA. To knee someone in their back is illegal. The reason being is because it can cause eternal damage. Not internal, but eternal damage. Simply because it can leave someone in a permanent disabled state. That kind of takes the sport out of it. But you're able to knee someone in the side. You're able to put it in the side. Boom. Because it knocks the wind out of them. So if I have my knee in your lung, you're going to have difficulty breathing. Don't give a shit who you are. Now, if I am to cut off blood or restrict the blood circulation to your brain for more than 1 minute and 30 seconds, the one thing that most people forget about is, let's say you go swimming. Because this is a drill that I was given probably when I was 13 or 14 years old. And this was actually a drill that my father did. And it's basically diving into the deep end of a pool. While diving into this deep end of this pool, while you're underwater, you're trying to stay down there as long as possible. Because when you do it, you go in holding your breath. The trick is, while you're underwater, to slowly release that breath. The problem is, even though nothing is pushing on you except the force of the water, the more breath you give up, the more panic you become. Because one of the most difficult things for anyone to do is to function properly after a minute without oxygen. If someone's underwater for, let's say, a minute and a half, it's a good chance they didn't pass out. It's a great chance that they're not going to have brain damage, because that's generally the first concern after circulation has been cut or oxygen is being deprived for the brain after 2 minutes. Well, watching this video and watching, in essence, the tail end of the video with the knee on the carotid artery that was done for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And the one thing about it is we have a question. And it's please reform. Please reform. I don't know how else to say that, but please reform. And the reason why I say it that way is because right after this happened, there was a lot of marching. There was a lot of rioting. There was a lot of burning. And there was a lot of outrage and anger. And people couldn't understand what the protest was about. They needed it to be about something other than George Floyd. The problem was the fact that you've been having several conversations that were brought up, that were being brought out. And during this episode, I'm going to give you at least 3 of the conversations that I've been in the last week on Facebook. And just in case 1 or 2 of them are listening, I went ahead and took the screenshots on 2 of those conversations. Because the third, I honestly did not think it would be deleted because it was an innocent conversation, because it was one where it actually didn't draw a conclusion, but it opened everyone's eyes to the actual problem of please reform. Now, the reason why I'm saying please reform is the result of one of those conversations. Matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and get into it right now. One of the conversations that was had was a couple days ago. There was a young man that had fallen asleep in a Wendy's drive-thru in Atlanta, Georgia. In the midst of that, after I believe it was 30 plus minutes of conversation and interrogation, the police officers decided to arrest this young man because he had fallen asleep and I guess he was under the influence. Got it. 38 minutes of this investigation, they decide now they're going to arrest him. Well, in the midst of doing that, they tase this young man while he's on the ground and he's not fully handcuffed. So a fight ensues. I get it. Do I okay it? Yeah, I get it. But here's where I'm asking, please reform. When the fight ensues, the young man gets up off the ground and ends up getting tased again. So he's been tased twice. The officer wrestles with him a little bit more because it's two officers there. He then takes the taser from the second officer and takes off running. Young man discharges the taser. The officer then shoots him with a gun in the back. Now, while that's not a detailed encounter or detailed process of the story, that's the story in a nutshell. It's a summary. So don't contact me about the details because that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the question. Because I just wanted to give you another context to understand the question that I'm getting ready to ask. Because it's actually not my question. The question that was posed was, should these officers be fired for doing their job? Now, my response to that, because the person that asked it is an ex-cop. The person that asked that is an ex-cop. I get it. The first thing I do is I post the actual law. The second part of that post is police procedure for that department. Let me say that one more time. The first thing I posted was the actual law that refers to a police officer and how they engage with a suspect with a weapon. What their procedures are, the things that I teach. Because when I'm teaching application, it goes in the context of the things that I am teaching for their process. So I'm teaching their process. And along with that, I put in that Atlanta Police Department's police procedure when dealing with a fleeing suspect. Because anybody that understands this, because I haven't gone into this very deep, that in order for a state statute, code, and ordinance to have the effect of law, it must coincide with Supreme Court decisions and federal statutes. I guess we all know that. I hope we know that. At least by now, because I've been doing this for 2 years. I hope if you watched enough videos that kind of relates to you, because that is the supreme law of the land. Doesn't change, not my words, not my rules. It's in their paperwork. But now I put those up, and my response is, the problem is they didn't do their jobs properly because they are not allowed to shoot someone in their back. Now, thought that would be simple enough because, again, I put their law up. I put their procedures up. Their rules. Cop comes back and says, hey, he discharged the taser. Great. Glad you brought that up. Now, if you're going to say that the taser is a lethal weapon, they used it on him twice while he was on the ground. Say that one more time. If you're saying the taser is a lethal weapon, they still violated department policy. Notice I didn't say law. They violated department policy because they used it not once but twice while he was on the ground. They are not allowed to do that. That's grounds for termination. Why? Because you didn't only violate law, you became a liability to the corporation. I'm going to say that one more time. You didn't only violate law, you violated your corporation's rules. You became a liability. Now we're in a high tension time with police and citizens. Now we're going to go back. I did a couple podcasts, did a couple videos in April and May. I talked about how when the country opens back up, the police are going to be more aggressive. They're going to be more violent. Why? Because their job is not law. They have not been taught law. Many of us that sit down, we understand this aspect of it. We sit there and we look at these bastards, right? We sit down. We're focused. One of them comes to us. The first thing we do, we start speaking law. The first thing they do is they become aggressive. Why? Because they are not knowing. Remember, I talk about words have power. The problem is they don't have any power because they have no response to law, because that's not what they are doing. They are enforcing statutes, codes, and ordinances that have nothing to do with law. So therefore, when you speak to them about law, you speak to them about their proper process, you speak with them, and then we say that they're unintelligent. We say that they're hiring people that are not very intelligent. My question is, why are we surprised when we realize they're not intelligent? Because unintelligent people are easily controlled. The reason they're easily controlled is because they don't ask any questions, because they go out and just fulfill a position. They're going out to do something just because they're told to do it. They will not question it. And if they do, they put on their gang flags and say, hey, we're good. This is us. I got this over here. The problem we're having with that is, please reform. Please. And it's one of those things I understand. I understand what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be police reform. But when you say police reform, what we're actually doing is we're begging these people. We're begging the system to change from what it was to what we need it to be. Change it to what it's supposed to be. Because I'm gonna go through a couple of things, because today y'all getting me. Y'all might get the angry black guy today. Because with this, I got a couple things that I'm doing. But I'm trying to hold as much of my emotions in as humanly possible. Because right now I'm doing this podcast, and just like when I did the PSA for the fake patriots, I literally have tears in my eyes. And it's because the saddest part about this whole thing is we have to beg to be treated as human beings. We have to beg for them to do the job that, because you hear people, oh, I think police need to be paid more. Fuck that. I think police should be paid just as they should be paid on doing any other job. They should be paid at a generously hourly wage. I get that. However, anything that is talked about being reformed, Nobody is looking to fix the actual problems in the Reformation. I'm going to get into that. But the reason why there are tears in my eyes is because, again, I have a flock of boys. I have a flock of minority, dark-skinned children. Well, actually not dark-skinned, but yeah, they're fair-skinned. They not really light anymore. They spend a whole lot of time in the sun. But if you look at them, you know, one, they belong to me, and two, that they're minorities. You understand that? We understand that. They understand what they are when they walk out the door. I have an older son who's probably just as dark as I am. He's experienced a police officer while in his own front yard telling him to come out to the street, get down on his face, and having a gun to his head at 15 years old. He's experienced that. That's why we're begging, please reform. And we're looking at the simple fact that while we had the George Floyd incident, while we have these people that are looking to excuse the actions that, one, violated law, the actions of deputies that violated law. I'm going to say that one more time. The deputies' actions by shooting someone in their back violated not only law, but department policy. He violated his work code of ethics. And people are looking for excuses to say he was okay. What he did was right. Now, I'm going to say this on the record for you, so you can play this back wherever you like. I think he was overcharged. I don't think he should have been charged with felony murder. He absolutely did kill him. I don't think it is felony murder as it is written on the books. I don't think it is. Now, I have been surprised. There's a good chance that since this is an election year, we might get surprised again. However, the flip side of this is the simple fact that people are making excuses for killing people just because they're wearing a uniform, just because they're part of a club, just because their gang flag is blue. These are the things that I have an issue with. These are the things that I'm begging, please reform. Now, I'm going to get into some other stuff. I really am. Because we can talk about why the Reformation needs to be done. Because one of the things that caught my attention this week was Dr. Umar Johnson was on the Breakfast Club. And he gave a breakdown of the actual start of our current policing system. Unfortunately, now while Umar Johnson's not a person that I listen to very often, because I do think he has a lot of views that are outside my privy, because I think they're ideas of grandeur versus actual reality. Now, does that mean that what he's saying is not true? No, that just means that we're going to agree to disagree to the fact that just because I don't like him doesn't mean he wasn't telling the truth this time. Doesn't mean that I'm a fan of him. Doesn't mean I'm not a fan of him. It just means that he has a point of view in the world that I don't agree with. However, what he spoke about was the origination of our current policing system, and he did this on the Breakfast Club. And you're going to see that. You're going to see part of that interview because I'm going to do a series. I'm doing a 10-episode series. It's going to be on SoundCloud as well as on the other major podcasting platforms. I have yet to decide if I'm going to do it for more than 10 episodes or if I'm actually just going to make it a separate podcast altogether. That's the only decision that I'm making right now. But it's going to be a 10-episode series. And the one thing I loved about it was the fact that he spoke matter-of-factly. And everything he said at that time, I agreed with. 100%. Because Most people have no idea what the actual system was set up to do or why it was set up. And it's often one of those times where I speak about often that you hear me say, it is working by design. It was designed to work a certain way. That's why people were not surprised when you had Rudy Giuliani, while mayor of New York, put together the stop and frisk system. And then you had Michael Bloomberg that was caught on recording saying, if you look at 95% of the crime, it's in Hispanic, minority, and black communities. And I tell you, that is war on the poor. While it was originally set up for the controlling of those that were just out of slavery, it ended up having a domino effect onto other minorities, but it ended up affecting the poor and disenfranchised. I'm going to say that one more time. It was set up one way. The effect trickled down to the poor and disenfranchised. And that happened to not only be one perception, because folks with dark skin are perceived to be behind the eight ball, and they're perceived to not be making money. They're perceived to not own anything. They're perceived to not be able to do certain things. And they're programmed to believe everyone that questions them, they must give an answer to. That's the perception. The problem is that when you're looking at someone, that doesn't make them dangerous. It's your reaction to them. That's what's dangerous. So whenever I speak about D.L. Hughley's book, The Most Dangerous Place for a Black Person to Be is in the Imagination of White People. That's not a knock on anybody that's listening to me, that's reading D.L. Hughley's book, that's not listening to me or not listening to D.L. Hughley's book. It's the understanding of what that actually means. Tonight, because again, I'm going to get into this. I'm going to get into this because I want you to understand this. And like I said, this is me. You're getting me tonight. I want you to understand this. I was watching TikTok tonight, of all places. I believe the young dude's name was Trey or Tay. But he was a young white country boy that he called himself a redneck and he listened to country music. And the one thing that he said, why is it I can walk around with a hoodie on and not be afraid? Why is it I can have an argument at a traffic stop and not be on my knees praying? He said, because I'm white. Now, the reason that hit me so goddamn hard was my son calls me Friday night. I believe Friday night, Saturday morning. I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm heading to Savannah. Now, he's in Georgia. He loves Georgia. That's what it is. Blah, 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 blah. I'm never going back. Can't stand it. Won't ever do it. Why? Because I see life is better somewhere else for me. Great. When he said he was already on the road, I got a feeling that I never had in my entire life. I felt like someone had kicked me in my chest. And keep in mind, I have been kicked in the chest really, really hard. But this one brought tears to my eyes. And it took everything in me because I didn't want him to go. And all I could say to him is, dude, whatever you need to do, be careful. Get home safe. I called him the next day to make sure he was good. And he was like, oh no, Dad, we're good. We already home. We got home about 10 a.m. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, oh no, we went down Savannah, did what we did, went straight to the hotel, left the hotel, got on the road, got something to eat. Then we got home. I've been home since 10 a.m. Now keep in mind, checkout from the hotel is 11 o'clock. He was home from a 2.5-hour drive at 10 a.m. in the morning. While feeling relief, I felt absolutely disgusted. I want to say this again. While feeling relief, I felt absolutely disgusted. Simply because you have a young man who is a productive citizen, doesn't get in trouble with the law, high school graduate, has a real career. I'm going to say that he has a real career. And I am scared. I am absolutely petrified that he'll get pulled over by a police officer in racist ass Butts County, and they'll do something to him. Because one, the tensions that are here in America right now, and the simple fact that he's dark skinned, that petrified me. The problem is I never want to have that feeling again. He's a grown man, and I had that type of response because I was sick that he went. And then the anger that followed when he told me he was safe was the simple fact that you got a young man that, one, decided, hey, I'm going to go out of town with my guys. We're going to go out and we're going to have a good time. The problem is, how can you enjoy yourself when you're constantly on guard? You're on guard not because you have to be doing something to have something happen, but a simple traffic stop. Simple traffic stop can leave you murdered. Now, I've given this story once before. I'm going to give it to you again because before I don't think it had any weight. The first time I gave this story, I don't think it carried any weight with anybody, but I'm going to give it again because I want you to understand the context behind it. Because even the dude that I did it with, the guy that I was showing this to, it blew his mind to be a part of it. Because most people, if it's not affecting them, they cannot relate to it. That is the problem. That's what hurts. Because just because it's not affecting you, you can't see outside your bubble. I get it. That's why I did the 75% rule. Because most people can't live outside of their bubble. They need to believe that something is there that's not. They need to believe in their heroes. The problem is, everybody that wears a cape isn't a hero. That's the problem. Everybody that's putting on that uniform and wearing a badge isn't a good person. And if you're condoning their actions, neither are you. And I don't care if I'm hurting your feelings tonight. Because you can always turn this off. You can turn the station. You can go listen to somebody else. Because I was in Roswell, Georgia. I had a couple of wealthy friends. One of them happened to be an older white guy. And I shouldn't say white, but an older Caucasian male. He was a Harvard graduate, very well for himself. He's helped me out on more than one occasion. He has been there. I can actually call him today, and he's got his hand. Hey, I got you. He's never asked for anything from me. He's only wanted to offer me an opportunity that he felt was the best opportunity for me. If he could open the door, he was opening the door. You have to appreciate people like that. That doesn't mean that we're buddies, but it meant that he had a way to do something and he went to do it. He wanted to make a change. That's all this guy was. He was just a genuinely good person. Now, actually, he genuinely is a good person. However, the time is 1996. And we're sitting down. Actually, no, I lied to you. It's 2000. And we're watching Prince Nassim. I'm not sure if you guys understand the fact that every Saturday I am watching a fight. So, whatever future lady I'm with, on Saturday, we're watching a fight. It's either we're going to have one or we're going to watch one. But it's more than likely we're going to watch one and then we can have our fight later. because we watching whatever fight's on Saturday. So now, after the fight, we're sitting down and we're teeing, and I smoked cigars back then, so I'm smoking my Cohiba and drinking my Louis the 15th, or excuse me, Louis the 12th. And we brought up the fact that I had just sold my 760i. Now, I sold my 760i for a multitude of reasons, but the most part was the fact that my wife at the time, she passed for white. She was really light-skinned, and she passed for white, so she didn't get bothered as much as I did. But in this damn car, I was pulled over constantly. And he had a car. He said, hey, why'd you get rid of your Beamer? I said, hey, whatever, I got a deal on this Buick. But, I just got tired of getting pulled over in my Beamer. He was like, dude, you wear a shirt and tie every day. I told him, I said, my skin's too dark. Now, I said it very sarcastically, but it was actually as serious as I can be. Because, again, it's something that never connected with him. Why? Because it never affected him. So he makes another joke about it. Oh, you're exaggerating, blah, 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 blah. You make money, you don't have to. I was like, dude, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter that I'm making, 60 G's a month. It doesn't matter that. Because at the time, I was making a little bit of change. So now, I said, you know what? Give me the keys. You sit in the back. Because, again, it was another young man that was sitting beside me. He was also a well-to-do brother. He drove a very modest car. And he was dark-skinned as well. So he and I got in the front seat of this tinted 760i. We proceed to go out on Roswell Road. I pull out of the condo complex, make a right. Get out there to Roswell and the intersection, make another right. I pointed. I said, did you see the cop right there? He said, yeah. Said he's getting ready to get behind us. He told me I was being paranoid. So I made another right. Because, again, all I was doing was driving in a circle. When we made that second right, the police officer was behind us. So when I made the third right, the police officer pulls us over. Now, I'm proving a point, so I'm happy. I have this shit-eating grin on my face. Cop comes to the window. I roll the window down and said, what do you need? He goes, license and registration. And I politely say, no. Which that was probably as polite as I could have got. No. Very sucker. No, can't give it to you. And I said, do me a favor. What did you pull me over for? He looks me in my face. The cop looks me in my face and says, the car has been reported stolen. Now, before I finish this story, note that I told you I'm in the car with the owner. I'm in a shirt and tie. So I don't look like a thug. I got a clean-shaven bald head. Matter of fact, I got a naked face. I didn't even have a mustache at that time. I got the naked face, clean-shaven. Got on, actually, I believe I had on a tag and a bracelet. A tag Waller, excuse me, for those that don't know the watches. I had on a tag Waller. And a shirt with cufflinks. Don't really look like a car thief. So I turn around because he said the car that I was in, me and this dark-skinned brother that's in the front seat, the car was stolen. So I politely turn around because I'm giggling. And I look at the owner, who is a Caucasian male. And at this time, he's in his mid to late 40s. And I said, did you report your car stolen? The cop then leans down, who's also a Caucasian male, looks over and sees the Caucasian male in the back seat, who now has an attitude. Why? Because no Caucasian male that believes they're superior to everybody wants to be wrong to somebody they think they're more superior than. They never want to be proven wrong when it's something that doesn't affect them. They never want to be proven wrong. They don't want to see their hero without a cape. That is why we're begging to please reform. He leans over And he says, no, I did not report my car stolen. What is your name? The officer immediately goes back to redressing everything that he was saying. They've been having a ring of thefts. And I was like, oh, so the people that are stealing them are in these hard bottom shoes, slacks, and ties. Right. But again, that's the reason I told my son to be safe. That's the reason why I don't immediately condemn someone just because they've got a record. That is the reason why I'm begging to please reform. This is why I look at and I listen to Michael Bloomberg and his recording and saying, yep, just copy and paste it all across the country. Copy and paste it. That's what 95% of the crime is. Even though it's the least amount of people out there that have them, they're doing 95% of the crime. And the problem is, that's how people have been programmed to think. Because the problem is, whenever a woman sees me, a white woman sees me, a Caucasian female sees me, and I get on an elevator and she clutches a purse, that is the most disrespectful thing I've ever seen in my life. However, that's something that I've had to live with 40 plus years. I haven't given it a shit for a long time. Because if that's what you need to feel comfortable, do you? Because at the end of the day, I'm not finna touch you. I ain't got nothing to say to you. Because if you're going to prejudge me just because of my size, yeah, you go and keep that to yourself. We're good. Because it's even those sideways compliments. Because I'm going to get back on even the task of this. But the sideways compliment is, oh, you speak so well. I had to inform a woman that was the most disrespectful thing they could say to me. Because I'm not sure why they would think I wouldn't have an education. Why they wouldn't think I can put two sentences together and not use ebonics or slang. Or, hey, shawty, what your name is? That's not what I do. I even hate the fact that now Apple has programmed Siri to type out ebonics. Because I understand that's not how I speak. But it's perception that is the most dangerous thing that I encounter every day. It's the perception that I might possibly do something. I might be a violent person. The problem is, you don't say anything to me, you can go about your business. It's when you interact with me and expect nothing to happen. Because now, here's the thing. Because I look at a lot of these videos. Unfortunately. Oh my God. Unfortunately. God has blessed me in so many ways. One of those is I don't have certain confrontations. Because I look at these people as I understand who my father is. I always tell people I understand who my father is. The blessings that I have received to not encounter 90% of these situations. Because give you a little idea. I'm not that guy that you can test. I'm not a tester. Not that dude. There was a young man that actually again still my first marriage. I was riding to go meet a client. I was in my wife's car. And this dude decided that he was going to take his time walking across the highway. Me, I slowed down. He decided that he wanted to stop. He tried to jump through my windshield. I proceeded to snatch this man off the front of my car and out of my windshield. The only thing that saved his ass was the police was there, because I had picked him up in my hands. I'm looking at him and I'm getting ready to throw him onto the street, and the cop is yelling, "No, don't do it, don't do it," because I saw the whole thing. Because there are certain aspects of responsibility and liability that I'm willing to accept. And I was going to accept the liability of beating the hell out of him. Because when he jumped through the windshield, glass got in my niece's eye. And I was going to have to wait there because of how Georgia is structured when we deal with car accidents. So I was going to beat the absolute shit out of him. Wasn't going to blink. Was going to even spend that little time in jail. Didn't care. And when I spoke to people about the entitlement, I don't answer questions to anybody unless I decide that I'm going to. And then if it's somebody that I think is doing the entitlement thing, it's a good chance I'm going to cuss them out. And if they attempt to obstruct me, I'm going to hit them. You can go to DeKalb County and pull my police record. I will hit you. I don't mind. The thing is, when we're looking at this and we hear about these people that are blocking folks' way and they're weaponizing the police against citizens, and then you're looking at call after call after call after call after call, and then it brings me back to Belly. The end of the movie Belly, there was a pastor on there, and he gave I believe it was a 7-minute speech to DMX at New Year's. And one of the lines that hit you was, again, the movie Belly is, I believe, over 20 years old. He spoke about the way of this world is crimes with no real punishment. Crimes with no real punishment. When you can weaponize the police against someone just because, and then there are no consequences even when you're lying. They can be on videotape lying. There are no consequences. But then the person that is getting called on, that's who the police is aggressive with. Even though the other person is lying, and it's on video that they're lying, they're weaponizing the police against another person. And people are okay with that. Please, reform. Now, let's get into something. Because we talked about the after effects of it. But what happened while in Minnesota they decided to start looting and burning down stuff and all this good stuff, and what happens is you forget about the pawn shop owner that was murdered. Kind of went over everybody's head because that's not more newsworthy than the riot. You forget about Mike Ramos, unarmed man that was murdered by police. That went over everybody's head. Nobody wanted to talk about that. That didn't make national news. You don't think about the flat out disrespect that's going on. And then we look at aspects of the absence of courage. Because I've actually told a police officer to eat his gun because he wouldn't shake anybody's hand. My question is, if you are technically in the customer service business, you're in the people service business, how is it you're not a people person? If you're supposed to be trained to deal with people on a day-to-day basis, you know that people are seeing you at the worst times in their life. How are you not inviting? How is it everybody you encounter is treated the exact same way and it's aggressively? How is that possible? Now, here's the problem I have with that. I was watching Live PD, and before anybody say any bullshit about it, I actually downloaded it to make sure we don't have any conflicts. I'm actually going to do a video about it. Because in the video, we talk about the fact that in the Live PD video, there's a guy, he's accused of pulling a gun out, right? And the dude said, yeah, I didn't have a gun. He said, I have my cell phone. And it's very similar to the Note 10 that I have. The only difference is mine is blue, his was silver. The one thing that caught my attention in that whole interaction was the fact that the first thing the cop tells this guy before he arrests him, there's no way in the hell you can mistake a cell phone for a gun. I'm going to say that one more time. The police officer tells the man that he's arresting, there's no way in hell you can mistake a cell phone for a gun. Yes, I paused for dramatic effect because I can name 10 people right now. 5 of them are in California. 2 of them are in New York. 1 is in Chicago. 1 is in Atlanta. Hell, 1 of those were naked with a cell phone in his hand. And the police officer said, I thought it was a gun. It looked like a gun. But this police officer is saying, because of their training, there is no way, not one possible way, that anyone could mistake a cell phone for a gun. Yet I can give you 10 examples off the top of my head where a police officer has done that. Please reform. We're forgetting about that because I'm gonna give you something else. We're talking about something, because I was actually going to do a documentary. I've actually changed my mind because, one, I don't have the heart to do it. I'm not even going to lie. It's not in me anymore. But I was going to do a video called The Lost Generation. And in it, it was going to be the documentation of our growing homeless population. I actually did a podcast on that about a year ago. Now, the reason why I'm not going to do it is because, like I said, I don't have the heart to do it. Because looking at certain conditions, and then for me to actually go to Augusta, Georgia, and see kids 13, 14, 15 years old living under a bridge. Yes, 13, 14, and 15 years old living under a bridge. I went to Atlanta, and there was this young man who was living in the bathroom at a park. That is the forgotten generation. I actually was downtown Houston, and the saddest thing was people were, I hated to say this, but they're acting like they're in New York because they were stepping over homeless people. Literally stepping over sleeping homeless people on the sidewalk. There is an actual section of Houston where there are homeless camps. There are sections in Augusta, Georgia that have homeless camps. And we're caring more about pushing people out and away because they can't do with. We're criminalizing life. And now, because it's affecting more poor, it's becoming more of an outrage. Because even now, the excuse that people are saying, oh, well, Colin shouldn't have kneeled because it's disrespecting the flag, when in fact, the national anthem has nothing to do with the flag. The national anthem doesn't even have anything to do with football until there was money paid for it. But then the national anthem itself is a song about murdering people that look like me. He used it as a protest because I'm going to give you a little background on that. That wasn't the first time. When Colin was first asked about it, it was like the 3rd game of the season. And the reason they brought it up was because he was supposed to be a starting quarterback. The problem was, which is also the flip side of this, Colin Kaepernick cannot read a playbook. That's why Jim Harbaugh had him, and he survived, and he was great off his athleticism. He shortened the playbook, gave Colin 4 plays, and Colin became great at those 4 plays with his athleticism. Got a new coach, and now Colin has to read a playbook. He couldn't do it as well as his counterpart. Colin was benched. That was the story. The story became, because Colin wasn't asked anything about game 1, wasn't asked anything about game 2. Game 3, after that, somebody asked him, why are you not standing for the national anthem? He said, that is actually my silent protest for police brutality. It wasn't until he responded to President Trump that it became about the flag. Now, here's the thing. He did a silent protest against police brutality. He also put his money where his mouth is, because he did things that helped police reform. He did things in inner cities where this was a huge problem. He did that on his own. Nobody asked him, didn't even ask for accolades from it. He just did it because that was a problem. Now I'm gonna give you the flip side of that, because what they did not tell you was 2 hours after that first interview, 2 unarmed men, one in San Francisco, blocks from the stadium, and another in South Central Los Angeles, was killed by police on video. That didn't make national news. I'm going to say that again. 2 hours later, game 3, first ask, 2 unarmed men were killed by police in California, 1 blocks from the stadium. Police reform. And then when you look at something, because again, today was an eventful day for me, because I did a lot of things that I wasn't planning on doing. Because this podcast for me it's me. I'm sorry, I'm not putting any commercials in it. I apologize that it's not going to be 2 hours long, but it's going to be 100% me. Because again, this one actually touches home more than most of the other stuff that I do. And I apologize to you guys that are listening that were looking for some law, because this one I'm not giving you that in this one. So if you want to turn this off right now, it's good. Go to the next one. Next week will be a little bit more meaty. But I had to give you this one. I had to get this off my chest, because the one thing that it does right now is I'm hurting. I'm feeling a pain that I've never felt before. I am feeling, you know what, it's so different. I don't know exactly what it is, because it's one of those that I'm not sure how I would respond if I was the father that got a phone call about one of my kids being injured, hurt, killed, anything, and then it dealt with a police encounter. I'm not sure if I would be able to mentally stay focused. Because I spoke to you guys about, I'm pretty sure I have some form of PTSD. I never realized that. It actually took me watching the movie The Hate You Give and realizing I couldn't sit down and watch that movie in its entirety in one sitting. Because each and every one of those scenarios I've been in. Having the conversation with your child when they're 10, 11, and 12 years old on how to get home when dealing with a police officer is not a good thing to do. Please reform. I shouldn't have to sit down with a 10-year-old and tell him, call my father. Call my father. This is his phone number. I shouldn't have to do that. There should be no reason for a police officer to be going into a school dragging a 6-year-old out. There should be no reason for my 10-year-old to have that conversation at all with any police officer. I should not be giving my 10-year-old instructions on how to get home. Nothing more other than get home. Okay, I was watching a TikTok video, and in the video, actually it kind of sparked me because it was a young white lady. She was a police officer, and what caught my attention was when she started the video, she was smiling, had a very pretty smile or whatever. But again, it's TikTok, so, I give them time to let the story develop. The problem was the PTSD in me came out. Because this officer, as she told the story, she began to cry. Pretty much like I'm doing right now. And that part, I can relate to it. Because she was talking about how when she goes into these fast food restaurants, people often pay for her meal. Right? I get it. I go into restaurants, people often pay for my meal. It's cool. I get it. There are places that I've gone to where there's even a store right down the street. They call it the cop store. Because hey, you know what? Come in. I got you. But there are a lot of places, even in El Paso, that don't pay for police food. But again, it's just, I'm going all over the place, but the fact is, oftentimes, cops either get really big discounts or they get their stuff paid for. She doesn't like getting her stuff paid for, right? Because again, she's doing her job. She wants to pay for her own stuff. Kudos for her. I appreciate that. Now, in this video, this young woman, she said she paid for her food through the app at McDonald's. So she's going through. She ordered, I believe she said, an English muffin and a coffee. Well, so she said, she pulls up, sits at the window. She's sitting. Then she sits some more. And then she said they come to the window and told her to pull up. Right? So whenever they come out, they just bring her coffee. They don't bring her muffins. And now she's in a full cry. And she said, you know what? Don't worry about it. Because now I'm too afraid to get my meal. Here's the problem that I had with that. Because I'm going to finish the story, but here's the problem that I had with that. Sound like she got bad service at a McDonald's. That's what I heard. Bad service at a McDonald's. Yeah, I expect poor service from children. If I have a good encounter at McDonald's, yay. If I don't, yeah, it's pretty much expected. I don't expect children to handle anything with any care. I really don't. I have very low expectations when I go to McDonald's. And to me, she was having a fit about bad service. That's what I heard. Now, to understand the context that she was giving, she began to start begging. She said, people, I'm afraid of my food at McDonald's. Please give us a break because not all of us are bad. That struck a nerve with me. Because remember, I just gave the story about my son. He's standing in his own front yard. He's told to walk out to the street, to be face down in the fucking street with a gun to the back of his head. Where was his please give him a break? He's home. He wasn't loud. He's at his house. Where was his break at? How about where was my break at one of the 50 times or more that I was face down in DeKalb County, Georgia? with a knee in my back and a gun to the back of my head. Where was my break at? When? You know what? How about this? Do I feel sorry for her? No, absolutely not. Not one absolute iota of remorse for it. Do I think she deserves that? No, I don't. But again, to me, that's bad service. Her expectations need to be lowered when she goes to McDonald's. Now, when you're talking about not all cops are bad, the problem is, if I go to a Ku Klux Klan rally and I'm standing there with people that are in the Ku Klux Klan, I'm pretty much supporting their agenda. I'm pretty much saying what they're saying and doing is okay. Because birds of a feather flock together. Those are things that I've been told. And I've also been told, oh, we only have a few bad apples. Well, one bad apple can spoil the bunch. Even when Chris Rock spoke about there are certain jobs that can't have a bad apple. The problem is, how many bad apples do you need before you decide to please reform? Now, I've got another story. Because, you know, that's what I do. I give you stories. Because I want you to be able to relate and understand through some of this stuff that I'm talking about. And like I said, I apologize to you. Because I'm not giving you a whole bunch of substance tonight. I apologize for that. I really do, but I have to talk about this. I had to get this off my chest. If you actually understood, one, not how much I'm hurting right now, but how angry I am right now. The one thing that I told you guys that I don't want to give you the projection of the angry black dude, but tonight, I'm that guy. I resemble him a whole lot right now. There has never been a time that tonight, I'm something else. And a lot of people ask me why my image on a lot of the stuff I have is the Hulk. Well, one of the things is simply because Lou Ferrigno is one of my favorite guys, like, of all time. Lou Ferrigno is a little known fact, is one of the reasons why I wanted to compete at the Olympia. Because it wasn't to win it. This year, I was actually planning on competing at the Olympia. That was my initial goal for when I started out. But Lou Ferrigno is also the original Hulk. But with me, he encompasses a lot of the things that I wanted. Because most people don't know, Lou Ferrigno is the biggest guy to ever hit the Olympia stage. 6'5", 315 pounds. When I first started getting together and starting to bodybuild, my body was starting to form a little bit. I took a picture. Took a picture of me screaming. Behind it, I put Richard 316. Because I'm 6'4", I wanted to hit the stage at 316 pounds at the Olympia. Lou Ferrigno did not win when he was 315 pounds. I wanted to be bigger than Lou Ferrigno. Simply because there's a moment in the Marvel movie, The Avengers, where they're telling him, hey, Bruce, don't you want to put on your uniform? What do you need to be angry? And he turned around and he looked at him and he said, that's my secret. I'm always angry. That's how he controlled the Hulk. He was always angry. But by the end of it, he wasn't angry anymore because he accepted who he was. That's who I like to believe I am. I've accepted who I am. And just sometimes, I don't give a shit about not unleashing the Hulk. Sometimes there is a time for Hulk smash. And the controlling of the Hulk is the thing that I have to do. But I put the brains with the brawn. But at the end of the day, it's time to Hulk out. Tonight you're getting Hulk out. You're getting the brawn. Because I'm angry. I need to talk about this. Because one of the things that I hate is the fact that my mindset is to always, we're going to fight back. We got to get it. I got to get it. And one of the things I used to tap them pockets. I got to tap them pockets. Got to. Absolutely, without no question. Okay. I'm actually getting ready to finish up on this episode because, like I said, this is very different for me because I'm not giving you, there are no commercials. There is no layoff. There's no lag. There's very little thinking points in here. It's just me talking, therapy, kind of giving you a picture. It's me begging, please reform. Because even with this, I'm going to finish with something else. I'm going to finish with a couple other things. But I have a friend of mine, and I love this chick. She put up a Facebook post. And in her post, she put up something that was hilarious to me. But again, she was referencing what's going on with the police officers right now. Her post stated how she hated how prosecutors cherry-pick cases and created guilt through the media because now they're guilty before they're ever even tried, and they're using words to attach things to people without looking at evidence. I'm going to say that one more time. She posted how she hated how prosecutors are cherry-picking cases and creating guilt through the media and convicting people before trial. Why does that sound so familiar? Why is that? Because I remember pictures of a little boy with a hoodie on and Skittles, smiling. But I also remember seeing multiple pictures of a little boy throwing up his middle finger and what was described as gang signs. Pretty sure you realize that I'm talking about the exact same person. And that's Trayvon Martin. I remember having a conversation with one John Melvin in regards to that exact same thing, where I was a sovereign citizen and I was a domestic terrorist and I was a thief and a thug. And then when he realized, the cop that arrested me gave me a hug before trial. He was happy to see me. Because even at one point I was David Koresh. But people were happy to see me not in jail. My response to him was, because anybody that know, my ears are still so Atlanta. And I actually went straight Young Jeezy on it. You can't assassinate my character because I'm not acting. That took his heart. Because he tried to use words in the media to portray after he cherry-picked a case. The thing that she just said she hated was being done to cops that has been talked about since the 1940s through comedy, through TV shows, through even white people making jokes about it. Now it's more prevalent because of cell phones, and it's happening to the poor and disenfranchised. Now it's a problem. Now it's an issue. But we've been saying this since the 1940s. Please reform. We're talking about, just in that instance, 80 years. But we're still asking, please reform. But they're tired of it being done to cops. But they've been doing this at least 80 years. Say it one more time. 1940s. It is 2020. We're talking about the exact same thing. Please reform. You're tired of it because it's being done to cops in 2018, 19, and 20. What about the 1940s, the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, 2010s, now 2020? When is it okay to stop for us? When is it okay for it to stop against the civilians and the citizens and those that are literally not doing anything? When is it okay to stop against them? When is it okay? When can we get our break? And why is it we have to beg for reform? Why is it we got to go and tear up for reform to get your attention? Because when he protested peacefully, nobody paid attention. When LeBron took a knee and put up the Eric Gardner, I can't breathe, nobody paid attention. When LeBron gave a speech, nobody paid attention. They told him to shut up and dribble. When LeBron and D-Wade and Carmelo made a speech, nobody paid attention, because I guarantee you 90% of the people that I'm talking to right now don't even remember those speeches. They remember Laura Ingraham saying, shut up and dribble. They don't even know why she was saying shut up and dribble. But then she co-signed Drew Brees. I'm going to say that one more time. She told LeBron to shut up and dribble because he wasn't elected and he doesn't have a say because nobody voted for him. But she co-signed Drew Brees doing the exact same thing because he agreed with her. Now, the begging that I'm talking about, that I'm referring to, that I am bringing up, is also where I'm getting ready to close at. Because when I sit down and I look at police attempt to skew a video where a 76-year-old man that's on the sidewalk protesting is shoved to the ground, and they're looking for a reason to excuse 4 police officers stepping over him after pushing him to the ground and busting his head open. Because, oh, he's an Antifa guy. And nobody realizing, or nobody even owning the fact that he's peacefully protesting, he's not blocking anything. Why are the police pushing him? They're not supposed to do that. I'm going to say that one more time. The police cannot touch you because they have no authority. They are servants until there's a crime. If there's no crime, they can't touch you. Why is everybody overlooking that? Why is that overlooked? The police are 100% at fault for what happened. Because regardless of who he is or what he does, they're not supposed to push him and touch him when he's peacefully protesting. Or how about shooting a 16-year-old in the head with a gun? Even if it's a rubber bullet, that's not even participating in the protest. He's going home from work. Why is that not okay? Huh? Why can't the police just shoot people in the head with rubber bullets? It's a rubber bullet. Why is that not okay? Why are we looking for excuses for that? Why do they not want responsibility for the shit that they've done? Why is it we can't hold them to liability for their actions? Why do they need to be cuddled? Please reform. Why is it when you ask someone making $100,000 a year, 6 figures, to do their job properly, there's an issue? I just want to know, why is that? Because this cop makes $80,000 a year that was crying about somebody that was doing something horrible with her order that was making $9 an hour. $80,000 a year. I can't ask her to do her job properly. But she's upset that somebody making $9 an hour isn't doing their job properly. Because again, I can't say anything to my brother. Because you remember I did a video And I talked about Mr. Muhammad there in Chicago, who shot a young man. And at one point, they used the word man to describe a 16-year-old that was skipping down the road that has mental limitations. He has a literal diagnosed mental illness that was skipping down the street that Muhammad shot multiple times and then lied about, but forgot that the people that recorded him, you can actually thank Vivid Security. So if you don't have Vivid Security and using their camera system, you're missing out on something. Because I recommend them, absolutely. And no, they are not paying me, because that video proved that this police officer lied. This good guy lied. And then when the police that investigated it, again, one of his buddies, one of the good cops, he investigated it. When he chose to actually write down what was on video, because not only did it come, unlike body cam, with all the footage, it came with audio. You could hear Muhammad holler out to the 16-year-old that was skipping down the street. Tell him to come to the car, and when the 16-year-old complied, Muhammad shot at him 4 times, hitting him twice. This young man had committed no crime, unless his crime was skipping off beat. Now, when you're asking me, why is it people don't comply? My question to you is, what happens when the police are called and they're not called for me? And I'm laying on the ground with my hands up because I am complying. And I'm killed anyway. I'm shot anyway. You know, Charles Kinsley, Danny Glover. Or excuse me, he was shot by Glover. His name was Daniel Shavers in Arizona. You know, the police wasn't even called for him. He was complying, and he was still murdered by a police officer that went home. Please reform. When you look at these officers that knocked over the 76-year-old man, they were actually charged justly. Then you have 57 other officers that quit. Why? Because they can't abuse people. Why is there celebration because of that? Then you look at the Atlanta police officer who shoots a man in the back, where law clearly states he can't shoot a man in the back. His first job is for the preservation of life. Preservation of life. That is his first job. His number one job. The one thing he has to do, he was unable to fucking do it. But you got Atlanta police officers not showing up because they can't kill people just because. Please reform. You want me to say this is a good guy when I'm doing multiple cases right now where they don't have any evidence. None. They're dismissing cases. And then they're refiling with new case numbers and not notifying people. But these are good guys. The system is working. I'm just supposed to be okay with that. Or I look at the fact that even during my own case, they attempted to make up things about me. Didn't work. They attempted to indict me multiple times. Didn't work. They attempted to say a whole lot of things and make up a whole bunch of things that didn't exist. But they wanted me to spend the rest of my life in prison because I was teaching. That was my crime, teaching. But I'm supposed to say, all right, it's okay, cool, y'all good. But when we actually look at somebody doing something that they can't do, and then you see other police officers, again, you only got a few bad apples, right? Why 57 people quit? Why 57 people quit, but there's only a few bad apples? Then you have, again, 2 people. One person charged because one person pulled the trigger. Now you have other police officers in other police stations not showing up for work in protest because they cannot kill citizens. But I'm supposed to believe it's a few bad apples. You have whole departments not doing work. You have police commissioners that are saying, you know what, I'm going to pull my guys because they can't beat citizens. We have to follow law, so I'm not going to do that. We have to be responsible and do what we wrote on a piece of paper as our oath. So I'm not going to enforce that. No, I'm not going to let them do that. We need to be able to beat them and kill them and take their life. You know, the things that we swore that we would not do. But I'm supposed to trust them. I'm supposed to feel secure that they're going to do their job. Because somebody asked me, do I believe in defunding the police? I want you to understand, do I think about the reconstruction of policing? Absolutely. Because at some point there has to be accountability. But when you're looking at this police reform and police defunding, most people don't understand the context of the defunding. Because even tonight I had a conversation and was talking about a Florida police department. Their funding is over $400 million. Is it excessive? Absolutely. Do I think they should have a different physical budget? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, again, we're talking about increasing their pay. How about we do the thing that we're having the problem with? How about we do things like hire brave people? Let's start off with that. Hire people that can think for themselves. Let's do that. Because we have a bunch of empty departments. Please reform. Because no bill that is signed or even being presented has anything to do with retraining. Uh-oh. I think I said that. But I'm going to say it one more time. No bill that is being presented or signed deals with the problem. Because no bill that is before anybody has to do with retraining police on how to properly police. Because when you're talking about doing the job the right way, you had a cop that was afraid of a sandwich. I had my son going to Savannah, and I was afraid he wasn't coming home. These are the context in which I wanted to give you today. Because I'm begging for actual reform. I'm begging for the actual accountability of those that are asking to be taken seriously. Because the one thing I've learned through all my years of living, playing sports, being combative, being even competitive, the reason you get respect is because you go out and take it. The reason people fear you is because they understand you have no limits. The problem is we're fearing the police because they participate and act as if they have no limits because they have the backing of police unions that encourage them to do the things such as walk off the job because they can't kill civilians. We have them not being punished because they can't follow simple rules. She was scared of bad service. But when one of her fellow police officers gives bad service, is she correcting them? Because when Muhammad was corrected, he threatened to kill his co-worker. That co-worker couldn't even show up back to work because other cops, either them one or two bad apples, threatened to kill their co-worker because he wouldn't lie for him. The one or two bad apples. like the 57 that quit in Buffalo, the 1 or 2 bad apples. Like the Atlanta police departments that aren't showing up to work, the 1 or 2 bad apples. You know, the guys that's not normal. But why aren't you showing up to work if you're good? If you're actually out there doing your job the right way, why aren't you showing up to work? Oh, because now you have to do what you swore to God that you were going to do. That's the problem. Just like if I ask you to do your job, I'm going to put it in the context of this officer. Why can't I just get my coffee and English muffin so I can go home? That's a problem. Please reform. Thank you. I love you. Support the channel. Do a monthly donation, 99 cents, $4.99, or $9.99. Share this audio. Share the podcast. Go like and subscribe on the channel. I love you guys. Good night.
The shaking colossus.
I'm gonna show you how great I am.